Marlon Brando is in whiteface, and that might be the least crazy thing about this movie. Hello, people of Earth, and welcome to Matinee Monday. I'm your host, Tall John Scheer, aka Paul Scheer, and this is a How Did This Get Made video series where we are highlighting some of the recent re-releases of old How Did This Get Made episodes. That's right, we've been keeping these in a vault for a very long time, but you can go back now and listen to them for free wherever you get your podcast. Just look for the episode called The Island of Dr. Moreau. Now, we recorded this episode without Jason Mantzoukas, one of the very rare episodes without Jason, but Alex Fernie jumps in. He is from Convoy Improv, an incredibly funny writer and actor, and he came prepared with research. And I mean, and this movie is absolutely nuts. During The Island of Dr. Moreau, Fairuza Balk, one of the actresses, tried to escape the island. She literally tried to leave the production, but they got her and they brought her back. I know more about this movie than I should probably know ever, because after this episode, I got so obsessed with it that I decided to work with a few people to develop a mini-series about the making of the show. We actually did a script with the writers from Disaster Artist, Weber and Newstetter, and it's still a great script, and maybe one day you will see a mini-series of the making of this, because the stories behind the scene are absolutely nuts. Val Kilmer, you might have seen his documentary where they show a couple scenes from this film. He's kind of losing his mind in this movie. So this movie is one of those movies that is actually fun to watch and fun to listen to. June did not realize that one of the characters was not CGI, so you have that to look forward to. And if you need to, be convinced some more, take a listen to this clip. Brando at this point clearly doesn't give a fuck.
No, Brando laughs through several scenes where he's just smiling and just sort of being like, I don't know.
There's a famous story about Brando in this movie that he had an earpiece in, and they would feed him the lines via earpiece, and it would sometimes pick up.
I've heard that he always did that.
Later, he did that.
Oh.
Like, he was often writing his lines down and putting it on cookie jars and stuff like that. But this is on an earpiece. This is, I think, the beginning of the earpiece era. And he would occasionally pick up police scanners. And so David Thewlis, who is the man that they bring to the island, said that in a scene he would go, "There's a robbery at Woolworths," thinking it was a line for the movie. So that's that. You got that level.
I would have loved to see that movie where there was a Woolworths on
on this weird island.
So we have him not giving a fuck. We'll get into him. Val Kilmer, not caring. Not caring at all. To the point I feel like...
I don't know about that.
You don't think so?
No, this is peak Kilmer, because he's already done... He just did Batman.
Yeah,
he just did Tombstone. He's like, this is most famous Val Kilmer, and then he comes in and does this, and you just see something in his eyes of no, I will not listen to you.
Gosh, guys, I didn't feel that way.
Really?
Really?
No, I didn't feel that way.
How about the part where they just cut to me and put the flower in his mouth? You could tell he's like, I'm going to do this.
Those were choices. I mean, I thought it was wild and crazy, but I find him so watchable.
But he's also he spends
watchable.
the entire movie dressed like the sketchiest scuba instructor in Honolulu. He's just he's going to help you put on the tank and just touch too much.
Yeah, just like, hey, let me get under that brow line.
Well, I'm sure we're going to get into him kissing those creatures.
Oh yes.
Okay.
And then, just to answer your question, June, Val Kilmer did sign on to this movie as the man who was going to be brought to the island.
That makes sense.
And then decided he wanted to switch roles after he was getting a divorce. And then when he got to set, he's like, man, I want to be in the movie 40% less than I am in the movie. So, so he did not give a fuck. And then David Thewlis, who I feel like is...
miscast.
Wow, there we go, right out I mean...
Ultimately.
Yeah.
I don't think the right casting exists. I don't think there's anybody to be like, that person made that movie.
I actually think Val Kilmer in that role would have been great.
I agree. Well, by the way, speaking of miscast, it was cast originally as Rob Morrow, but Rob Morrow left the movie. He's like, I'm out of here. This is crazy. And left after 3 days of filming. One of many people who tried to escape the filming of this movie. They also caught Fairuza Balk at an airport and you got to come back.
They had to bring her back.
So, this is the caliber of movie that we're talking about.
People fled the movie. They fled. They tried to escape the movie.
There is a documentary which there's a few facts that we'll be pulling from. The documentary is called Lost Soul, the doomed journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau, that details a lot of these stories. One being that the original director, Richard Stanley, worked for 4 days, was driven mad by Val Kilmer, so much so that he moved in with a a paralyzed man on this island and then decided to disguise himself as a mutant monster and just watched the movie from that perspective. So there's a lot of crazy shit going on behind the scenes, which then I would go, well, now what's going on in front? And what's going on in front
is just as wild.
Just as wild. It does not really, I mean, this is a simple movie. I mean, simple tome. It's a classic thing of literature,
also
right?
like it's a movie that doesn't make sense why someone wanted to make it in 1996. Because when H.G. Wells wrote the book, I was reading about this, was like there was like all the rage in Victorian England was just vivisecting animals, and it was a problem. Like people in London were just like they all gather around and they like cut open animals and like fish around in there, and people were being like, "This is awful. We shouldn't do this." And that was the world in which he wrote this book. So it's a natural progression of something that was going on. Then you cut to 100 years later, and it's like, why are they making a pig lady? Like, what's happening here?
Well, I think the end, not to be a spoiler, but the end really hammers home the point that men are animals and animals are men. I mean, that's basically what they're trying to hang their hat on at the end of the day, and this is what I don't even understand. From just to get it to basics on plot. Is he turning animals into humans or humans into animals?
Great cue.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No idea.
I have no idea.
And it seems both.
The plan in the movie, there's a moment in the movie where I believe the filmmakers think a twist just got dropped.
Yeah.
And I can't for the life of me figure it out.
Which one?
It's where David Thewlis is like, they needed my DNA.
Yeah.
And then you're like, for what?
For what?
To what end did they need this DNA?
Okay,
and they never explain it.
I think that they needed his DNA. My guess would be that they needed his DNA to reverse the process of Brando's daughter becoming an animal.
But Brando's daughter, well, now, was she already an animal that he had turned into a person? Or was she a person that he was...
I believe she was a person that was being turned into an animal.
Well, no, because
Why?
he said...
I have no idea.
Because at a certain point when Brando's having that conversation, which is the reason I had to watch most of this movie in subtitles, there was a part in the movie where he said, I believe he said, my son is an alligator, or my alligator is a son. And I went back and rewound it, and it was not that. He goes, I'm allergic to the sun. But I was like, his son is an alligator? So, but I thought
it could have worked.
Been. Yeah. But he says, like, she's like, it's wearing off, and she was going back to being an animal. I don't think so. I think that's why they got David Thewlis'
But then why?
DNA.
So presumably, if we take this movie at face value, then Dr. Moreau somehow found out that David Thewlis existed.
Right.
Sank a ship he was on.
Or a plane.
Yeah. Crashed a plane, let him float around in the ocean for a number of days while two other people murder each other. They die. That happens. First thing happens in the movie.
Yeah.
Then they pull him into this place, take their sweet time to get his DNA, really, just sort of dicking around with this dude.
By the way, they could have gotten his DNA on the boat immediately.
Or
he was
I think
passed
It's a
out.
long way to go.
Sincerely, they probably could have asked him. They probably could have said, hey, listen, man, can we have some of your DNA to help my daughter? And he would have been like,
just
yeah,
a strand
of
of hair.
Yeah, just a little bit of DNA. That's all we need.
I gotta say that I'm not on the side of David Thewlis in this, because at every point they're like, hey, man, stay in here. Be cool. He does not be cool. He's never cool. He is breaking out at all times. He's like, get me a vest and get me out of here.
But why?
God loves
See,
vests.
what's weird about the end of the movie is that he finally escapes on a raft.
Oh, yeah.
But if he wanted to leave so much earlier, and that never seemed to be an option, and nothing happened in the movie where he was able to figure that out, like, oh, I'll make a raft. It was just like, oh, and at the end of the movie, he just takes
had
off
to
in a
end.
raft.
I mean, gotta leave.
The movie can't keep going on.
And by the way, the thing that I love about him at the end is like he's kind of sad. Like, I hate to leave you guys.
He didn't really want to go.
He didn't want to go.
Well,
He was like Dorothy leaving Oz.
The development they make too for him, like I wrote this down. One of the first lines he says, like he's talking to Kilmer, and he's like asking him about him, and this is how he explains who he is. He says, "I'm working for the United Nations on the peace settlement."
I wrote that down too.
That's
the
it.
Peace settlement.
On the peace settlement. That's it.
The big peace settlement.
Yeah, the peace settlement. That's where he's working. He's working on the United Nations on the peace settlement. You get it, right? We don't have to talk about me anymore? Okay, great. Let's get to some animals. That's it.
This movie does that a lot. Like, Marlon Brando literally says, like, I can't explain to you what I'm doing. Like... And then they don't. They never explain it. He's like, no, I could never do that to you. He goes, I can't explain to you what I've been doing in 17 years and 17 minutes, so we'll do none. The Island of Dr. Moreau is now wherever you get your podcasts in the How'd This Get Made stream. That's what I'm going to say. So make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel here. Stay tuned for more Matinee Mondays. We're always here telling you a little bit more about the episode that we just re-released. Like, subscribe, do it all. You know how to do it. Love you. I mean, I don't mean that in a weird way, but I do. I love you. See you next week.